stopping the state from slowly draining your health, right? And they're actually very parallel because in the legacy system, it assumes a basic rate of 2% inflation. Like, yeah, hyperinflation is bad, but actually also deflation is bad. So a little bit of inflation, a little bit of loss of wealth in your sky. And this current system, the medical system says, oh yeah, sudden death is bad, but try to live forever, that's weird. So you should just die a little bit every year, right? And so it's really the same logic as the Fed, right? The Fed is, they want you dead, just a little bit every year, right? And so we resist that, we stand against it.
Yeah, welcome to Simply Bitcoin Live, the most watched daily Bitcoin live show on YouTube, Rumble, X, Nostr, everything. Guys, we are your #1 source for the peaceful Bitcoin revolution. We cover breaking news, culture, manic warfare. We will be your guide through the separation of money and state. There is Balaji starting off hot, saying the T word so many times in a row. It made me a little bit nervous because of the YouTube algos. But I mean, he's saying the quiet part out loud. Like, this is what Bitcoin is all about. Bitcoin is about protecting your purchasing power from the state. And that is a message that as I continue to go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, it's something that continues to blow my effing mind, which is the entire world has been psyoped into thinking that you have to be a part-time investor just to maintain your purchasing power, number one. And number two, the entire world has been psyoped into thinking that somehow your money has to lose purchasing power in order to function and exist. That is absolutely nuts. That is gnarly. Bitcoin is the peaceful revolution. Bitcoin is saying enough is enough. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I refuse. I refuse to partake. And it's about taking your purchasing power, taking your wealth, taking your energy out of that parasitic system into a system that protects you. And all you have to do is take self-custody. And when you take self-custody, it's not a get rich quick scheme. It's a don't get poor scheme. Like, that's the way that you should look at it. You still have to work very, very hard. You still have to have the discipline of saving. You still have to put those savings into self-custody. So it requires a lot of discipline, and it requires a lot of discipline over a long period of time. This is not something that's going to happen overnight, but now you have a mechanism to protect yourself. Before, you had to, like I said, become a part-time investor, invest into gold. Gold was just going to maintain your purchasing power. Like, you had to jump through a bunch of hoops. With Bitcoin, it's pretty simple. You earn Bitcoin, you mine Bitcoin, you buy Bitcoin, you put that Bitcoin into self-custody, you metaphorically lock away the key, you forget about it, and the longer you wait, the longer you save, the better your life becomes, the cheaper things around you become, right? So very, very interesting. The more time I've spent thinking about it, the more simplified in my mind it becomes, but it's a very complex topic for someone who's just getting into Bitcoin because they've been used to living in the fiat matrix the majority of their lives, where they've been convinced that somehow it is absolutely normal for you to lose 10, 15, 20% of your purchasing power on a yearly basis, and that is somehow the norm. That is not the norm. Money doesn't need inflation in order to function. Politicians are not the solution. You are the solution, but you have to take agency and action over your own life and a little bit of personal responsibility and take back that financial sovereignty. And other news as well, Blackrock changes their terms with Coinbase custody agreement because we were covering this last week. I'm surprised actually how fast they've moved on this. But last week, there was a rumor that Coinbase was rehypothecating BlackRock's Bitcoin. It was a huge rumor. Multiple people did videos on it. We did a videos on it here at Simply Bitcoin. Our buddy over at Bitcoin University, Matthew, did a video on it as well. And it was, it was like wildfire on Bitcoin Twitter. And what's really interesting to me is how quickly they've changed the terms and conditions, and now the custody agreement requires a 12-hour withdrawal amid debt rumors. So BlackRock is putting the pressure on Coinbase and saying, hey, no, you're not going to rehypothecate. But still, there's still high rehypothecation risk. But it's interesting to see this change in policy, because you would think like, well, what does BlackRock care what a bunch of YouTubers and what a bunch of people saying are on Twitter? But BlackRock wants their customers to have confidence in their ETF product. This is what it's all about. And they're putting pressure on Coinbase to say, hey, listen, you better have that Bitcoin that we're custodying with you, because I don't think Larry Fink liked what Brian Armstrong was saying whatsoever. Also, in other news as well, credible rumors, these are Michael Saylor's words, not mine. Credible rumors are circulating that one or more major banks in the US will soon be able to custody Bitcoin. So that first bank is Bank of New York Mellon. And these are that was one of the three things Michael Saylor said needed to happen in order for Bitcoin to reach $5 million per coin. Now, what's really interesting about this, the whole concept of banks custodying Bitcoin, is Operation Choke Point 2.0. And there was some damning evidence that was released over the weekend. Shout out Nick Carter, shout out Ryan Selkis, and shout out Caitlin Long. They did a incredible work kind of uncovering this, specifically Nick Carter. It seems like a lot of the crypto-related banks were targeted by the current administration, something that we knew, but we didn't realize how malicious it was and how much of an influence specifically Elizabeth Warren had in the demise in some of these banks. And now if you put that together with the Fed's recent enforcement action on Customers Bank, one of the last friendly crypto-friendly banks in the United States that currently banks exchanges like Gemini, it kind of makes sense. They're trying to isolate the industry from the traditional financial system. And what I'm guessing is happening is that they're hoping to funnel. They're like, okay, we can't make this thing go away. It's not going anywhere. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to funnel people to the ETFs because we can control the ETFs. Self-custody is the dangerous part. And what I think they're trying to do is that they're trying to go after every bank that facilitates on and off ramp transactions. So if you're selling dollars for Bitcoin and then that exchange allows you to withdraw that Bitcoin to self-custody, I think that's fundamentally what they're going after, because they've realized that they're not going to make this thing go away, specifically with BlackRock and Michael Saylor coming into the fray. This is something that we've been covering over the last 6 months. This is the reason as to why we get a lot of heat for this, but this is the reason as to why this upcoming election is so important from a regulatory perspective for the Bitcoin industry in the United States. So anyways, lots of stuff to cover, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a hell of a show. And we have an incredible guest, an up and coming Bitcoin podcaster. He's doing incredible work on YouTube, on Bitcoin Twitter. So we got Robin Seyr in the house. How you doing, bro?
Hi, how you doing? Really good. Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for joining us. And of course, my co-host for today in the house, Optimus Fields, bro. How you doing, dude?
I am doing wonderful. Of course, another day in paradise covering Bitcoin. How could we complain? Life is wonderful. Life is great. I didn't drink as much coffee as usual this morning, so I think my energy is a little lower than usual. But hey, we're still here. I'm sure I'll get geeked up as these topics start to come out. But yeah, man, I think well, actually, let's just get in the show, because I'll cover my thoughts on the BlackRock stuff and the Operation Choke Point 2.0 things. But let's just get on the show, because I don't want to drag out the intro too much, Nico. Let's jump right into it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we jump into the show, I do want to give a shout out to Simply Bitcoin's lead sponsor. Of course, I'm talking about Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. What does automatic self-custody mean? That means that when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. It doesn't even give you the capability to leave the funds on the exchange. This perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state, because after all, self-custody is the revolution. Buy real Bitcoin, enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin in Canada and the USA. Head over to bitcoinwell.com today to get started. Put in your email address. It takes 2 to 5 minutes to get verified, and boom, you're ready to buy. And every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn Bitcoin Well points, and you could redeem those points. You could use those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest. So we're going to do that for you guys right now. We're going to toss a coin into the Wishing Well for an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. So get your Lightning wallets ready, and first person to scan the QR code on your screen has won 500 sats. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the numbers. All right, everybody, I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stampseed. Usually when you buy yourself a hardware wallet, it comes with a piece of paper. Paper is prone to water damage, fire damage. Your dog could eat it. This is not how you should store your generational wealth. You should store your generational wealth by literally proof of work stamping it into a piece of titanium. And that's exactly what the Stampseed kit will allow you to do. It's a titanium seed phrase storage kit. Comes with the hammer, comes with the anvil, comes with the letter stamping tool. So you could literally, letter by letter, in the comfort and privacy of your own home, stamp your seed into a piece of titanium, which is going to stand the test of time. Titanium is fireproof, it's waterproof, your dog's probably not going to want to eat it. This is how you store your generational wealth properly. And I got a special deal for you guys. If you use promo code SIMPLY, again, promo code SIMPLY, you get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com website. All right, everybody, let's get to the numbers. But before we do that, if you guys are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. Help us break 100 likes within the first 20 minutes of the show if you're watching us on YouTube. By the way, we're streaming this everywhere. We're streaming this on X, on Rumble, on Nostr. Shout out to all the zaps we're receiving on Nostr as well, and on YouTube. So share the video, like the video, really helps spread the orange signal forward. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $63,290. Sats per dollar, 1,581. Block height, 862,548 blocks to halving, 187,452. Halving estimate, March 28th, 2028. Total Lightning Network capacity, 5,065 BTC. Capacity value, 320 million. Realized monetary inflation continuing to take fiat currencies to absolute school, 1.35%. The market capitalization of Bitcoin, 1.25 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 6.88%. In the grand scheme of things, Bitcoin is just getting the party started. Anyways, our first headline for today. News dropped from cryptoslate.com. Headline is Blackrock amends Coinbase custody agreement to require 12-hour withdrawals and amid debt rumors. Blackrock has amended its custody agreement with Coinbase, updating operational procedures for its Bitcoin Trust ETF, according to an SEC filing dated September 16th. The amendment to the Coinbase Prime Broker Agreement introduces changes amid improving withdrawal processes and asset management during unsettled trades. The modifications shortened Coinbase custody withdrawal processing time when handling withdrawals from the vault balance to a public blockchain address while trades credits remain unpaid. The agreement also permits the trust to withdraw Bitcoin from either the vault balance or the trading balance to public blockchain addresses, provided that an amount equivalent to the unpaid trade credit remains in the aggregate balances after such withdrawal. Now, here's my 2 sats on this. El Salvador has made their reserves public. River Financial also came out with a way for you to verify their reserves. I believe also Kraken has a mechanism for you to verify your reserves. In the ideal situation, you shouldn't want to trust a third party on if they have the Bitcoin or not. Ideally, this is why we recommend our lead sponsor, Bitcoin Well. Ideally, you want to take self-custody because you're just trusting yourself. But if you are to trust someone else, you want to make sure that they have the Bitcoin that they say they do, or you have a Mt. Gox or FTX type of event, right? A bank run, so to speak. So, you know, it's interesting how much BlackRock is basically putting pressure on Coinbase to give their clients confidence in their product. And what I would say as well is us content creators on Twitter and on YouTube, we went nuts about this topic last week. And it all had to do with the fact of Brian Armstrong's comments on this. They did not make me feel confident at all that Coinbase was not rehypothecating. And I suspect this is BlackRock's reaction to this. So it goes on to say, these adjustments reflect BlackRock's effort to enhance the operational framework of its ETF by redefining withdrawal capabilities and offering flexibility in managing assets during unsettled trades. The firm aims to improve liquidity and access for institutional investors who require timely asset movements without being hindered by outstanding trade settlements. It goes on to say, Bloomberg senior analyst Eric Balkanas refuted these allegations, stating that BlackRock would act if Coinbase were screwing around with their Bitcoin. He emphasized that such behavior would violate regulations and that BlackRock is serious about its operations. The Bloomberg analyst suggested that these rumors stem from investors seeking explanations for the selling pressure keeping Bitcoin in a downward trend since March, and from inert skepticism towards institutional involvement in digital assets. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong also addressed the claims, clarifying that all mints and burns related to the ETFs in the firm's custody are ultimately settled on-chain. He noted that institutional clients have off-chain options before trades are settled on-chain, such as over OTC trading, with funds settled in Coinbase Prime vaults with one business day. Armstrong added that while users must trust a centralized custodian to store the Bitcoin backing Coinbase's products, the firm operates transparently and complies with regulatory standards. Okay, you know what I got to say? Make the reserves public. We've seen it happen time and time again, where the regulations are in place, everything is in place, but the rug pull still happens. I think at this point, if you're still getting rug pulled, you got to ask yourself, what is the definition of insanity, ladies and gentlemen? Trying the same thing and expecting different results. Now that we have technology like Bitcoin that allows you to take self-custody of your assets in an efficient manner, specifically a large, like a large amount too, right? You could theoretically store millions, billions, trillions of dollars by writing down a 12-word seed phrase. I mean, if it's trillions, you're probably going to want to stamp it into a stamp seed, right? A paper would probably be kind of fickle in that sense. Promo code simply. But the point I'm trying to make is we now have the technology where there is no excuse. You shouldn't be trusting someone else with your money if you now have the technologies and the tools to trust yourself. And another thing that I got to say is Coinbase, why don't you follow in the footsteps of El Salvador? Why don't you follow in the footsteps of Kraken? Why don't you follow in the footsteps of River Financial? I would love to see the Bitcoin that BlackRock holds. I would love to see that address public. Like, why isn't that, like, if you really want the public to trust, I get that there's all these regulatory frameworks, but that hasn't helped in the past. Why don't you make those reserves public? Maybe I'm naive to say that, but that's just my 2 cents. I'm going to pass it on to Robin. Robin, what's your take on this? And do you suspect that it has to do with how much pressure we put on as a community last week that they are reacting this way?
I'm not 100% sure about that, but one thing is for certain, and we talked about when you were on my podcast about that, that the power is shifting. More and more people want to have a public reserve. They want to have the proof that the money is actually there, because we have so many instances that the money was supposed to be there, but it wasn't there. So first of all, I want to say there's no, and you nailed it actually, there's no excuse to not self-custody at that point. If you have Bitcoin, if you have anything to do with Bitcoin, there's no excuse to not do self-custody. I still see it in my friend circle. I still see it in my comments. I ask the community about, oh, how many of you do self-custody? How many of you have it on exchange? There's still a way too large of a percentage, even amongst those people who watch daily or weekly Bitcoin podcasts and Bitcoin content. Even those still don't do self-custody. There are some legit reasons. Maybe you have it in some retirement account and you cannot get it out because of some lockup period. Okay, yeah, yes, then you have it in MSTR, then you have it in somewhere else. But there's no excuse to not do self-custody. There are so many services. There are so many interesting and great solutions around those things. There's just no excuse. Just wanted to get that out because I still see it in the community. Even those who watch the Bitcoin podcast, even probably they're around here in the community that people watch here, and there are still people that don't do the self-custody, which is for me, why, I don't know why, but it seems to be still a thing. And then the next thing, as you mentioned, the public reserves. If you have if you're a public company and you want to establish trust, the old way to do it is with regulatory frameworks, with the politicians, with that kind of old system. But we might be on the verge of a new system, and it might be a good idea to, yes, have the regulatory frameworks, do whatever you have to do to be in a legal form. But why not also do the new way of actually proving the reserves? And that's the power that is shifting here.
100%. I 100% agree. There's absolutely no excuse. By the way, shout out to the 1,000 of you guys watching live between YouTube, Rumble, X, and Nostr. If you guys are enjoying the show, make sure to smash that like button, comment, share the stream. Really, really helps with getting the message out there. Excellent comments from Robin. I'm going to pass it on to you, Opti. Oh, we just got zapped 40. Are you doing that manually, Opti?
Yeah, bro, I'm a pro.
Okay. Appreciate the zaps. You guys could go to zap.stream and follow us to Simply Bitcoin, and you can zap us live. Anyways, Opti, what are your thoughts on this, brother?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think I said it. I forget when it was on the show the other day when these rumors were being played out and we were covering it live, that I'm convinced that Blackrock isn't doing anything shady right now because they want this ETF product to be very successful. And it's still very early in the ETF adoption, or rather, quote unquote ETF adoption game. Even though the ETF is I think officially at this point, the best release of any ETF ever, I think it would be very stupid. And of course, as the meme goes, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I think it would be ridiculous for them to try to do any trickery right now with the ETF. It is in BlackRock's best interest to have the ETF product go well, and any kind of rug pull in the ETF. I'm not saying that it won't happen in the long run, but I'm just saying right now, I think it's in their best interest to make sure that that ETF product is basically fully backed. And so I really do enjoy this pushback from BlackRock to Coinbase, shortening that time frame. It went from 1 day to now 12 hours. And of course, people on Twitter were basically trolling like, well, now Coinbase only has 12 hours to get all that Bitcoin that they need. But hey, they're still going to try to do some trickery there. But Nico, I think you asked a rhetorical question. And again, being the reigning toxic person on the show, you asked the question of why doesn't Coinbase publicly release their address with all this ETF coin? And, the very low-hanging fruit example would be because there's probably some holes there that they don't want people to see. Not saying that Coinbase would be dumb enough to do that. I really think the opposite. I think it is in their best interest to make sure that all that Bitcoin is there. And it'd be really dumb for them to do some trickery right now. It wouldn't
just be dumb; it would be legal.
Well, of course, not only illegal, but it would be it wouldn't just be dumb for Coinbase.
Fraud.
Yeah, not exactly. Well, but then again, Nico, it's not like we haven't seen that before in the space, so it's not something new. But I just think it would be not only bad for Coinbase and the ETF in general, but it'd be really bad for the whole industry at large. Though that one quote from Eric Balkunis is very interesting I think BlackRock would respond if there was some trickery, and then they actually did respond. And it's like, all right, well, let's shorten this out. I don't trust you guys, which I think kind of goes to the general trend.
I'm going to double down. Like, they're saying that they're doing this like by, I saw how like the rumors last week were, we made multiple, we covered it on the live show. We did a video on it. The video performed extremely well. Matt Crowder from Bitcoin University did a video on this. It was on Twitter. It got a ton of attention. Do I think it's a coincidence that they changed the regulations the week after? No, I don't think that's a coincidence at all. I think that they are reacting to rumors, and the BlackRock says, no, like, don't F with our product. This could potentially mess with our product. Coinbase, you have to move that back down to 12 hours. And I think that's going to quell some of the rehypothecation rumors. That's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I don't know where I was going, but yes, exactly. Keep going.
All right, everybody, stay tuned. We still got a lot of news for you guys. So there was 5 things that Michael Seyr said needed to happen in order for Bitcoin to reach $5 million per coin. One of those things finally happened despite all the regulatory pushback. So stay tuned. We're going to hit the news. Let's do it. Here we go.
Very special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your piece of Bitcoin.
All right, everybody. Opti is going to model it off for you guys a little bit right now. You guys get yourself a hardware wallet. We recommend a Passport by Foundation Devices. Put it closer to the screen, Opti. It's incredibly easy to use. It's open source. It's Bitcoin only. Guys, get yourself a Passport by Foundation Devices hardware wallet. And by the way, if you use promo code C, you get a discount. Get yourself Passport by Foundation Devices. ASMR. All right, everybody. So Michael Seyr said that 3 things needed to happen in order for Bitcoin to reach $5 million per coin. Here is the original clip from a Twitter Spaces that was held a while ago. Let's check it out. Here we go.
And then I think there's 3. Look, first of all, it's going up by a factor of 10, whether they fix any of this stuff, right? It's going to go. It's going to be a grind up by a factor of 10, just because gold is broken. And Bitcoin's going to replace gold. And now everybody in the universe knows they need a non-sovereign store of value in the form of a bearer instrument. So now they're looking, the amount of stories. For last year, people said inflation may be coming. We're not sure. Now the mainstream narrative is flipped to inflation is here. You need an inflation hedge. So it's going to grind up to replace gold. It'll go to $500,000 a coin, regardless of whether they fix these things. But there are 3 things that are massive catalysts that cause an acceleration. And I don't think that those 3 things don't take us to 500,000. They take us to 5 million a coin, right? Those 3 things are a spot ETF where someone can go ahead and buy $100 million of Bitcoin by a security, an ETF security. I think that's 1. 2 is your bank is going to custody it for you and lend against it. And 3 is I can mark it up or mark it down on my balance sheet based on fair value. Pari passu. It'll be pari passu to the way I'd handle Apple stock, or at least that good. If you have property with fair value accounting, by the way, it becomes pari passu to the way you'd handle treasury bonds on a treasury balance sheet. Treasuries are better than stocks because treasury is property, whereas a stock is a security, and you're capped out at 40% of your balance sheet as security. So it would be a major, major breakthrough if you saw any of those 3 things. And I'll end with this one observation. I tweeted this last week, but I think it's very powerful. If the banks can hold this stuff on their balance sheet, then a whole new class of investors are going to buy it. People are going to put in billion and multi-billion-dollar orders to buy it as a treasury asset. Nobody's going to sell it because there's no reason to sell it if you can borrow against it at LIBOR plus or at SOFR plus 50 basis points, right? So you'll be borrowing against Bitcoin at SOFR plus 50 or SOFR plus 100 basis points. No one's ever going to sell it. And then, as I joked, you won't be able to afford it. I mean, you will be able to afford it, but, you know, everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. When the banks normalize it and you can draw a $100 million credit line at 100 basis points from an FDIC-insured bank, at that point, right, we're going to blow through the market cap of gold by a factor of 10.
Right.
All right. So, Michael Seyr being the Chad Seyr. By the way, I think this was originally recorded back in 21. So let's go by those three things real quick. Thing number one, ETF. Check. Thing number two, changing in the accounting rules. Check. The FASB accounting rules that was announced late last year. The last thing that was on that list was the ability for banks to custody this. Now, this was a huge fight, right? We remember that there was a bill that was being proposed called SAB. And that bill essentially prevented banks from custodying digital assets. And it was actually when it went on Biden's desk, I forget what the correct Opti, could you help me here? He signed against it. I don't know when the president is, like when he
didn't he veto it?
He vetoed it. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Anyways, so like they were fighting against this hard. And the reason that they were fighting against this hard, I think it becomes very, very difficult if you are a government agency and all of a sudden all of Wall Street is for something, for you to be against it. And it puts, I think, the government in a very, very tricky situation because SAB 121, it puts the government in a very tricky situation because all of a sudden they're getting competition from the private sector, from the free market on money. And a lot of how the government pays for things is their unique ability to create money for free that everyone else has to work for. I think that has devastating effects on society. But all of a sudden, Bitcoin comes along and is like, yo, like, what's up? Like, you know, I can offer an alternative. I can offer an alternative not only to money, but I could actually offer an alternative to bonds, right? And now they start to really, really get themselves in a very tricky situation. So I think Bitcoin exposes all incentives. And I think what we're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years is really, are governments really playing the role that they're supposed to be playing? Because, you know, it's like the Lincoln speech, a government by the people, for the people. A government is supposed to represent the wants of the people. A government is just to provide law and order, a stable society, you know, a referee of some sorts. Or has government expanded its reach, its utility in society? I suspect that it has expanded its utility tremendously due to the funding that's coming from the fiat money printer, of which Bitcoin is a threat to. But we're just going to see how that plays out. And it's going to be fascinating. But what I'm really excited about, going back to these three things that Michael Seyr said, is, thanks Opti, is it looks like, and again, this is coming from the Chad himself, credible rumors are circulating. This is Michael Seyr on Twitter, by the way, for the audio listeners. Credible rumors are circulating that one or more major banks in the US will soon be able to custody Bitcoin. If we check out the article, it says BNY identified as first bank to receive SEC exemption from SAB 121. It goes on to say, in what would be a huge breakthrough for banks looking to dive into the institutional crypto custody business, BNY, America's largest custodian bank, was identified during public testimony in Wyoming's Select Committee on Blockchain, Financial Technology, and Digital Innovation Technology as having received a variance from following the SEC's SAB 121 accounting guidelines for its institutional crypto custody business. As part of a broader federal update on Monday, Chris Land, general counsel for Senator Cynthia Lummis, testified that the SEC and thus likely other regulators have cleared the way for BNY to provide institutional custody of digital assets. Now, it's not surprising at all. Here is a clip of Senator Cynthia Lummis talking about a Bitcoin on Fox Business. So check it out.
And you are an advocate of Bitcoin as well. Tell us about it. I don't know why anybody would be opposed to Bitcoin or crypto.
I'm so delighted to see President Trump making it an issue during this campaign. The Republican convention touted policies that are favorable towards Bitcoin and other digital assets. The president is highlighting it. He showed up at Nashville Bitcoin 2024 in support of a Bitcoin strategic stockpile. And yesterday, as you said, in New York City, he made his first transaction for food with Bitcoin. The important thing is many more Americans and people all over the world are embracing digital assets and digital technology. It's here to stay, and we want the United States to be the leader in it. We've always been the leader in financial services, and this is sort of the next frontier in financial services. We don't want this industry choosing Europe as its home base, and Europe has a better structure for digital asset efforts than we do. We need to catch up.
Well, Ms. Trump is buying hamburgers for everybody at this bar and paying for it in crypto of some kind. I don't know whether it was Bitcoin or not. He had a wallet, quote unquote. See, I've learned the lingo of the wallet. And he does not want the Fed and the Treasury to, have this sort of central bank digital currency business, which I agree with him would be a very bad idea.
And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is such a popular issue with young Americans and Americans as a whole, even though the current administration has been somewhat hostile, they've had no choice but to bend the knee a little bit. Here is breaking news. Presidential candidate Kamala Harris says, finally, we get a word from her specifically as it relates to digital assets. It was coming from campaign, from people in her campaign or people that knew her, but we didn't have any direct quotes. This is still too vague, in my opinion. You could put central bank digital currencies under digital assets. So I would love further clarification, but I think we're heading in the right direction, specifically if, there are banks that are getting specific exemptions as it relates to SAB. And these words specifically from Kamala, quote, to quote Bitcoin Magazine, apparently presidential candidate Kamala Harris said, quote, we will encourage innovative technologies like AI and digital assets. That's still a little bit too vague for me. I hope more details come as it relates to digital assets specifically, because this is a Bitcoin show after all, but definitely a step in the right direction. And this news coming out is definitely another step in the right direction. So to continue with the article, as part of a broader federal update on Monday, Chris Land, and General Counsel for Senator Cynthia Lummis, testified that the SEC and thus likely other regulators have cleared the way for BNY to provide institutional custody of digital assets. Quote, BNY is looking to get more involved in the crypto custody business. Land testified, quote, they have had some problems with Staff Accounting Bulletin 121, and the SEC has apparently given them some kind of variance from SAB 121 to move forward. So that's really, really good news. Anyways, it goes on to say, last Monday, SEC Chief Accountant Paul Muntner gave a speech in which he surprisingly revealed that the agency had granted some exemptions to SAB 121, mostly finding that the rule did not apply to certain entities if they met certain conditions. Muntner said one exemption has been granted to a bank, several brokerage houses, and other entities that use blockchains to track and transfer traditional assets without specifying the names of any of them. SAB 121 requires that entities who choose to custody crypto list the assets on their balance sheet and create a corresponding liability equal to the worth of the crypto. The crypto and banking industries have strongly criticized this measure as overly burdensome to comply with. In his speech, Muntner outlined situations in which the SEC found SAB 121 did not apply for a bank, brokerage house, or other entities that use blockchains. In the case of the bank, he said the conditions involve the institutions working with a state regulator first to ensure that the crypto assets being custodied will return to the customer in the event of a bankruptcy, and that activity with customers would only compromise institutional custody with sufficient controls in place to manage risk. Now, here's my take on all this. I think this is bullshit. Like, if there's a law and the government is picking and choosing what bank or what entity gets to the law is enforced on and what entity the law is not enforced on, then what is the point of the law in the first place? Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. But I think it shows you, like the approval of the ETF that happened in January, how much power these financial institutions have. Because Gary Gensler didn't want to approve the ETF. I doubt they wanted to give this special variance to BNY Mellon. I doubt Kamala Harris wanted to say those things about digital assets and AI. But this is a testament to the power of our movement. And I think it's also a testament to how much our movement has infiltrated, I'm going to use that word, these very, very powerful institutions. And now they have become employees of Bitcoin. I think that's Max Kaiser's wording on it. And I absolutely love it. I'm going to continue using it because basically anyone who is advocating for Bitcoin, pushing for Bitcoin, is working for you. This is the beauty of an aligned incentive structure system. Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to Robin. I've been rambling on for a little bit. What's your take on this? I think this is incredible bullish news. Do you agree? Now the three things have been checked off. Now let's see if the $5 million prediction by Seyr comes true. What's your take, Robin?
I think 5 million is low, but
let's go.
There's this general idea that I developed that we kind of in 2024 we had the last step with the ETF that we have now all the buckets in place. We needed the nation states to be on board. We have now with El Salvador and with Bhutan and other nation states, small countries already really hyper focused on Bitcoin. We have companies since 2020, but really since 2024 also in a major way on Bitcoin. We have those small regulations, valves, like whatever you want to call it, with the banks in Bitcoin, with the ETFs now. And really what's going on is now we have all those small buckets and big buckets ready for Bitcoin. And the money is really just waiting to come into the Bitcoin scene now. We needed the first 10 to 15 years to build the infrastructure, to build the YouTube-only channels, to build the regulatory framework, to build the publicly traded CEOs that endorse Bitcoin, to build all those amazing things that we have built the last 15 years. And now it's just time to see all the money, all the people, all the mainstream media, all the things that we have been waiting for and working towards coming into place. And that's why the next 10 years will be crazy bullish. 5 million, it's like the time is always hard to predict, but for me, the full potential of Bitcoin is 50 million plus inflation, so 50 million without the inflation. And 5 million, I think, is just the stepping stone. And as also Michael Saylor himself puts, I think, 49 million price target at Bitcoin at, what was it, 2045 or something like that. So that's more where we're going. But yeah, 5 million is in the meantime, we will hit it towards that goal. The one thing that I was wondering about, and maybe that's a question you can answer me, how is Europe further ahead of the USA? Cynthia Lammers said something in the video, and I was like, how's that working? I don't see the Europe on the EU especially further ahead in Bitcoin in any way, shape, or form. But maybe I'm not seeing anything. But in terms of CBDCs, Europe is ahead, and America is putting a stop to that, at least for now. So like, I don't see any arguments why Europe is further ahead in Bitcoin than America, and that's coming from someone living in the European Union in Austria.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just like a competitive thing. I suspect that plays into it. Like, I would say, you know, you hear Trump in his rhetoric say this all the time, where he's like, you know, if we don't do this, China's going to get ahead. Maybe she's seeing it from that perspective. I totally agree with you. I think Europe is one, like Christine Lagarde and what they're doing with the C. They're moving full steam. They don't even care what people have to say about the central bank digital currency. They're like, we're just going, you know, I don't care. So yeah, I mean, I would, from my position, I agree with you, Robin. I don't know what she's seeing, but I think from a rhetoric standpoint, from a talking point, it's a really good talking point, right? It's like, look, you don't want Europe to get ahead. You don't want China to get ahead. You want the US to get ahead. So I understand what she's doing. Is it true? I don't think so. I would say that the US, despite the hostile regulatory environment from the current administration, is one of the most positive countries or big developed countries as it relates to the industry. Maybe you could say Dubai has a more positive stance, and Singapore and these like kind of like smaller, highly developed, wealthier countries. Maybe that you can say Hong Kong. No, not so much. So you could make an argument, maybe. But anyways, but I agree with you. I think Europe is a step behind, but we're gonna fix that. Bitcoin fixes these things. Opti, what's your take on all this?
Well, first off, I do kind of want to echo what Robin was saying. I've been saying this for a while, that it does feel like the year of 2024 is one of those years that, yes, the price has kind of gone sideways. You know, we've been capped at 58K all year, basically. At least that's how it feels. But on the back end, I think there's been a lot of development in areas that, like, I know a lot of Bitcoiners might not like this, but in areas such as institutional adoption, whether it was the FASB ruling that got changed and is like an option this year and going to be official in 2025, whether it was the ETF being released, whether it's seeing more corporations follow Saylor's MicroStrategy strategy, or now this ruling with BNY Mellon, which basically unlocks all of the capital now eventually to get into Bitcoin. So as Saylor's been saying, and you know, Seyr kind of got chewed up over there, what was it, last week with that safety clip about getting yield on Bitcoin. But I think it kind of really goes back to a classic quote from Hal Finney, where in the future there will be Bitcoin banks that are fully backed and there will be other Bitcoin banks that aren't, and the market will learn which is which, and they will gravitate towards the one that secure their Bitcoin the most. And so I think we are seeing that the impediments to stopping to stopping the adoption of Bitcoin from an institutional level, they're getting cleared out. And I think 2024 is going to be one of those years where, like, yeah, the price, technically nothing really happened, and we still have a couple months for the rest of the year, but there's a lot of work on the back end. And that's why I keep saying all year that it does feel like there's a perfect storm on the horizon for 2025. With all that being said, though, Nico, with all that being said, I became a man on the 2008 financial crisis, and I do not find it ironic or funny at the least that one of the banks that was too big to fail, that was a part of the big financial crisis, is now the first bank to be approved the custody of Bitcoin. I just find it hilarious. This is why we always say that taking custody of your Bitcoin is the most important aspect of Bitcoin. Obviously, when you look at the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, BNY Mellon wasn't at the epicenter of the 2008 financial crisis. They did get a huge bailout out of there. They are too big to fail bank, and now they're the first one to get the approval to get, you know, Bitcoin in custody. These are the things that make me feel a little iffy when we get down into the statistics of this. But hey, you know, it is what it is. There's favorites here.
No, but there is favorites, and that's the part that pisses me off the most, because it's like SAB 121 is a rule, it's a law. Now they're making an exception to the law, so the government is picking who is exempt from a specific law, meaning that BNY Mellon now essentially gets a competitive advantage because the government says they do. Like, what the fuck is that about? You know, and then and I'm so glad you brought up 2008, because it's like, but wait a second, were they one of the banks? So it's like, again, I think it's total BS. Shout out to Caitlin Long, like really putting the pressure when it comes to Custodia, and and that blows my mind. Custodia Bank is a bank that is 100% fully reserved. unlike the zero reserve requirement for the rest of the banks, that bank got denied a federal banking charter. We have a crazy episode for you guys tomorrow in regards to the attacks by Elizabeth Warren, and we have more details. Nick Carter did an incredible bit on this and covered a lot of information, but it's not a single set of rules for everyone and everyone's playing fairly. It's clearly it's rules for thee but not for me, and the government is picking winners and picking losers, and that's not how free markets should work, right? So they're abusing the regulatory power to favor some banks over other banks. That's not capitalism. That shouldn't be the role of government. And they're doing all of this under the guise of it's for your protection. I'm sorry. I lived through 2008. I don't believe that. Opti doesn't believe that. I'm pretty sure Robin doesn't believe that. So yeah. But anyways, beautiful thing about Bitcoin, it exposes incentives. It's going to continue to expose this. And at the end, I think we're going to win. Everybody stay tuned for the culture. We're going to talk to Robin about his awesome podcast, Up and Coming. And we have a lot of other stuff to talk about as well. Stay tuned. Let's check it out. Here we go. All right, everybody, before we start speaking with Robin, I do want to give a very special shout out to our sponsor, the Orange Pill app. Stack friends who stack sats. Join the 12,233 Bitcoiners that are currently on the Orange Pill app. It is the #1 resource for Bitcoin only events. Also to connect with other Bitcoiners. So if you're traveling, you go to a new city, you're in a conference and you don't know any Bitcoiners around you, the Orange Pill app is for you. It literally will show you what Bitcoiners are around you. It will allow you to send them a message directly and to connect with them. It's also one of the best ways to reach me. I don't really answer Twitter DMs or random emails these days, but if you message me on the Orange Pill app every week or two, I make sure to get back to every single one of you guys. So download the Orange Pill app today, scan the QR code, or check the link in the video description. Stack friends who stack sats. Download the Orange Pill app today. Scan the QR code or check the link in the video description. Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to Opti, can you read that comment?
Yeah, we got Kim Gage in the comments. He goes, BNY Mellon is the insider's bank and part owner of the Fed. This is not good for Bitcoin and only backs up Whitney Webb's thesis. Sheesh.
Anyways, guys, we have 180 likes on YouTube. Help us break 200 likes within the first hour of the show. So smash the like button. There's like 400 of you guys watching live on YouTube alone. So smash the like button. Really, really helps get the orange signal forward. Anyways, Phil C says Robin has a great podcast. I believe it's Robin.
Did we spell it wrong?
Did we spell it wrong?
But I get it a lot. Robin with an Y instead of an I, but it's okay. I get it a lot every day, I guess.
Oh, we totally spelled it wrong.
No, I literally copied what he did. They spelled it wrong. Phil spelled it. Anyways, who cares? Let's move on. Okay, Robin, let's talk about your podcast. I do want to bring up your Twitter bio real quick because I absolutely love this, and then we'll do like a little TLDR of your goals with the podcast, and then we're going to talk about the vision for 2050, which I know is one of the topics that you love the most. But for everyone out there that isn't familiar, I do think this is a great way to highlight and tee this up. You got in your bio, we got Robin. He says Austrian Bitcoiner. And I'm not going to stop talking about Bitcoin until it's the base layer of our financial system. So teeing you up on that note, Robin, why do you do what you do? Why are you a Bitcoin content creator? And why should people listen?
I committed to myself that I will do Bitcoin content the next 10 years. I teased it a little bit before. I think that we kind of hit in 2024, this beginning year of where Bitcoin is really building on a basis, on a fundamental basis that we have built the last 15 years, and now the next 10 years is just thriving the Bitcoin adoption in every way, shape, or form. So we need those digital soldiers out there and educating people about Bitcoin. And I was thinking of like, how can I do that? I was basically trying out last year whatever I can do. I had like a weekly news show. I had short clips like TikTok format videos. But in the end of the day, nothing really was natural to me. And the most natural to me was having conversations with other Bitcoiners. So I basically started in December or like 28th of November last year, so not that long ago, a Bitcoin podcast. And I was like, okay, I will just have conversations and we'll try to get people on talking with me and talking to other people about Bitcoin. I started that just as a try to like, okay, can I do that? Is that something that I want to do? Is that something that resonates with the audience? The first like 1.5 months was nothing really happening. I loved it, but the audience, there was no real audience there. But I was keep going because I really liked it. And after like 2 months, I saw some bumps in the audience, and I was like, yeah, let's keep going with that. And then my conviction really grew of Bitcoin, because I saw so much that I didn't see 3 years ahead. Like it's fascinating when you interview every day a Bitcoiner. You get so much content, you get so much education in your head that you didn't have before. So I was feeling stupid like just a few months before. I was like, okay, I'm over 3 years in Bitcoin and I don't understand so many things. I learned through the Bitcoin podcast about UTXO management. I'd never heard it before. But through the Bitcoin podcast, I learn about the things. So with the Bitcoin podcast, I actually get myself educated. And now this is a really big passion of mine that grew. And all of a sudden, I'm also able to do it full time. So while I was doing that, all of a sudden I can do this full time. And I think it was like around like half a year ago, somewhere around those lines, that I was like, okay, Robin, you have now something that is something I can do full time. What is your goal for like the next 10 years? And as a Bitcoiner, I like to look at long-term goals and not like short-term goals. So I want to do this 10 years. I committed myself to doing that 10 years now, and I will do it every day for the next 10 years, having someone in the Bitcoin scene on my podcast and talking about Bitcoin for the next 10 years. That's basically my goal. And why this is my goal, I already outlined some of the pockets and why I see the Bitcoin industry so positive.
Love it, Robin. Okay, now on that note, the long-term vision of Bitcoin. Anyone that's watched your content knows you have a famous question that you ask most of the people around, and you're actually going to do a speech on this at Bitcoin Amsterdam coming up, next month? And so I want to ask you, and I do have your tweet here, what is your vision, your personal vision of Bitcoin in the long term, Bitcoin at 2050? What is the Bitcoin 2050 world that you think we are heading into? What is the long-term vision, and how do you see this playing out?
There are so many aspects to it, and I think if we talk about everything, we probably can cover like 5-6 hours around that topic alone. One thing is very important for me to note before: the timing is always really hard to really guess. Like the timing. It could be 10 years before, it could be 10 years after that. So like 2050 is just a really interesting goal to aim towards, because it's in 26 years. And most people, the popular saying, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year. They underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And everyone absolutely underestimates what can happen in 26 years. It's a very long time, especially if we're moving that fast. It's like basically we have now 15 years. Double that will come in the next 30 years. That is around the 2050 mark. So we will have a lot of developments. We will have a lot of really great advances in that category. So the one thing that interests people seemingly the most, at least that's what most people click on YouTube. You both know the game. It's like, what will the price be at hyper-Bitcoinization? And I really am a fan of Jesse Meyer's model of looking at like what is right now the total net assets, and I will break that down very simple. If you have questions, we can dive into that later. if you have the total net assets of, let's say, 900 trillion, as Jesse Meyer says, the question is how much of that Bitcoin will cover or capture. Jesse Myers puts it very conservatively at like 20%. Other people say like, oh, Bitcoin is money. Money should be is half of everything, so it should be 50%. I say it's more like 80 to 90%. I think most of the wealth will be captured by Bitcoin at some point. Again, not saying it will be 2050. It will be somewhere in the future. It could be faster. It could be slower. The timing is always really hard. That's why I try not to do predictions with time, just predictions of where we headed. And then we look at when we capture actually like between 80 to 90%. Let's say like around 58%. Then we're looking actually at the first thing we have to capture how much of the percentage we can cover. And the second thing that we have to look at how many Bitcoin will be there. And we already have lost a lot of Bitcoin. And I look at, just for simple terms, at 15 million Bitcoin. There might be just 10 million Bitcoin in 2050 because a lot of people maybe donate them, throw their keys away by intentions or not by intentions. So there might be less Bitcoin, but I go with 15 million on that front. And then we're looking at a Bitcoin price without inflation with 50 million per coin, which is interesting because Michael Saylor said like 49 million 5 years earlier than that, but he factors in inflation. So that could be interesting. I think we will have a lot of inflation, and it's interesting because most price models, even the power law model, I think, don't really factor in that what happens if we have hyperinflation. In 26 years, there can be a lot of hyperinflation happening, and then all your models are destroyed. So what I always go back to, let's not focus on measuring Bitcoin in like US dollars or fiat terms. Let's measure it in what is right now here. And what is Bitcoin's terms. That's why I say like the 50 million is in today's dollars term. That's why the inflation arguments then are out of the window. So that's the price part. But then we go to society. Then we go to an individual level. Then we go to freedom things where when we have Bitcoin, what does this mean? This means that we all have the possibility to move money around in the whole world without asking for permission. If I now transfer money from Austria to some other bank or from Austria to America, not only it's a headache, but also there is a lot of steps involved in that where a central institution can say, multiple central institution can say no to that transaction. That cannot happen with Bitcoin. And this uncovers a lot of potential in the individual, a lot of empowerment, a lot of trust that we can have under each other. Also the concept of national borders and that vision of the sovereign individual will be reality. I think we will live in that reality, what is displayed in the sovereign individual. And really interesting also, I talk in the last few months more and more about Plan B, passport, flag theory, however you want to call it. And this will only be enhanced with Bitcoin. Being a citizen of the world and not a citizen of Austria or America. There will always be, I think, countries or different regions where you can live. Those traditions and those values and this culture will always prevail. But you will be way more able to freely move around. So there's a lot of interesting routes we can now go towards. But I already talked a lot, so I will leave it at that now. If you have any further questions.
Yeah, no, I do. I have one more question, but great rip right there. I think I'd agree with you on the majority of that. We don't know where this is going, but we are all in agreement that it's most likely going to take over the world. And who knows, 20 years? Yeah, who knows how long? 10 years, 20 years? We know where the end game is. We don't know our timing. But on that note, Robin, we are kind of getting to the top of the show, so I do want to give you the last moment because I did see a great tweet from you as well. And this is what Nico and I try to do. And also, you really touched on something that we constantly harp on. Like, there's a fine balance between doing what we want to do on YouTube and also knowing what works on YouTube. And I think few people understand that. If they don't make content, it's very easy to criticize when you don't really actually do it. But Robin's seen the same thing we've seen. So that's the first tidbit. And the second tidbit is this tweet. And it was the importance of and the need for the right form of education to bring to the masses. And we're on the same mission. So I want you to talk on this as well, and then we'll wrap up today's show.
For me, it's really interesting and kind of easier because I have a show where it's all centered around the guest. So I invite the guest, and the guest is saying his content. He's saying his own truth and his perspective. So I can only persuade in the title, in the thumbnail, in the content, only what the guest actually said. And that's my hard rule. I will not put something, a title or thumbnail or whatever, what the guest didn't say. And then it's just figuring out like what in education do we need? Because people say like, oh, it's clickbait. No, but we want people to click on Bitcoin content. We want people to actually understand what Bitcoin is. So we have to not close the garden, we have to open the garden. And how do you open the garden in the social media landscape? You make clickable titles. You make really good TikTok videos that are like 15, 30 seconds long, and everyone wants to watch them because they're really good made. You have to make the the packaging as good as possible. We want to make Bitcoin, we want to present it as good as we possibly can, and not put it on some down drawer to only the nerds will find it. So that's why I'm really passionate about making Bitcoin content accessible. And then when people are in the Bitcoin content, then we can go towards what are the most important values that we learn them. The most important value is basically critical thinking, I think. And then we come to like self-custody, hold your own keys, what to do with altcoins or shitcoins, or how I call them, and all those things, all those values that we preserve and we want to give away with the people. So I think there are a lot of interesting discussions on where to go then, but I think we will be in a very, very nice future in Bitcoin. Also, one thing I want to mention also, I think the Bitcoin only content space, now when there are new people coming that just came in 2094, they might not understand, but it's a huge thing that we now have so many Bitcoin only focused channels. This was not there like 10 years or 5 years ago even. I think it kind of started in 2020 where more and more Bitcoin only content all of a sudden hit the scene. So I love the Bitcoin only news channel that you guys have. We have so many Bitcoin only podcasting things, and it's great that we have such a variety in the scene. And I think who was it, Walker, I think, from the Bitcoin podcast, he said we don't have enough Bitcoin podcasts till we have more than the finance guys. So we have to have way more Bitcoin podcasts. We have to have way more Bitcoin content creators, no matter what your format is. If you have like a short TikTok channel, if you have a long form ranting channel, if you have a podcast, if you have a news channel, whatever you have, put it out there, be a voice, be vocal about it, and be a content creator. It's weird for me because it's basically additional competition, but I don't see it like that. I think we are the digital soldiers that move towards a Bitcoin future. And the more soldiers on our side, the better it is for Bitcoin and the better it is for us, as the same idea is everyone that is in Bitcoin is working for you. If I have Bitcoin and you have Bitcoin, I work for you and you work for me. That's the basic idea of that.
Hold on.
100%. Well, Robin, thank you so much for joining us on Simply Bitcoin today. For the 1,578 of you guys watching between YouTube and X, and the 100 or so of you guys watching on Rumble, and the 10, 20, I don't know, of you guys watching us on Nostr. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Make sure to smash the like button. If you guys enjoyed the show, if you feel like we provided you value, consider subscribing to Simply Bitcoin. Give our guest a follow. Robin, where can people find you?
I'm on YouTube. I'm on nowadays actually Rumble. You guys inspired me to open my Rumble channel. I didn't have a Rumble channel before the YouTube incidents you had. Now I have a Rumble channel. I'm constantly uploading my library, but also every new video is now on Rumble. I'm on X also. All the videos are available on X also, and I'm all the podcast platforms. The biggest one is YouTube. By the way, I'm really close to now the 10,000. I think I'm like 50 subscribers away from the 10,000. So maybe I can hit this today already. Yeah, thank you so much for hosting me. I'm really enjoying it, and yeah, looking forward to the next one.
Oh yeah. Well, Robin, thank you so much for joining us, guys. Go give him a follow. I'm your host, Nico. This was Simply Bitcoin Live for September 23rd, 2024. Of course, our guest for today, Robin, and my legendary co-host, Optimus Fields. Guys, go touch some grass. Enjoy the day. We'll be back tomorrow for another episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. And of course, Rustin's content is coming in hot later this afternoon in about a couple hours or so. Peace out, everybody. Take care.
Brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.